The day my father died, my stepmother handed me a suitcase. Not a hug, not condolences, not even a moment to grieve. Just a suitcase. It was still raining when we pulled into the circular driveway of our family mansion, the house my father built from nothing but grit and 30 years of sleepless nights. The funeral had ended less than an hour earlier. My mascara was smudged, my chest still felt hollow, and there she stood, Victoria. Perfect black dress, dry eyes, impeccable posture, waiting. The moment I stepped inside the foyer, marble floors, crystal chandelier, portraits of my father lining the walls, she rolled the suitcase toward me like she'd been rehearsing this. "You'll need to leave tonight," she said calmly. I thought I misheard her. "Excuse me?" She sighed, as if I were the inconvenience. "Your father and I updated the estate last year. The mansion belongs to me now. You're an adult, Harper. It's time." Time? My father had been buried 3 hours ago. "This is my home," I whispered. "It was your home," she corrected. The staff avoided eye contact. The house suddenly felt unfamiliar, colder, like it had already chosen sides. "You have until morning," she continued, "but I'd prefer you go now. It'll be less uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. Like I was some unwanted guest overstaying a vacation? I stared at the staircase where my father used to wait for me every Christmas morning. I remembered learning to ride a bike in the driveway, prom photos, late-night kitchen talks. He promised this house would always be mine, I said, my voice shaking. Victoria smiled. A small, sharp smile. People promise many things before they die. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Grief turned into something heavier, something electric. "I really think he left me with nothing?" I asked. Her eyes flickered just slightly. "I know he didn't, because I made sure of it." And that's when I realized something. Victoria had always been 2 steps ahead. But my father? He was 10. I grabbed the suitcase handle, but I didn't move toward the door. Instead, I looked at the wall behind her, the oil painting of my father's study. The study. The private safe. A safe Victoria didn't even know existed. "You're right," I said quietly. "I'll leave." Relief flashed across her face. "But before I go," I added, "I just need one thing from Dad's study." Her smile faltered. "If you're feeling the tension and want to see how this unfolds, I'd say here, pausing just long enough to let you breathe, make sure to stay with me because what was inside that safe changed everything." Victoria followed me upstairs. Of course she did. She didn't trust me. And she shouldn't have. My father's study still smelled like mahogany and old books. His leather chair sat perfectly angled toward the fireplace. Everything looked untouched, but I knew better. Victoria hovered near the doorway as I walked toward the bookshelf. "You're not taking anything that doesn't belong to you," she said sharply. I ran my fingers along the 3rd shelf, right behind a row of antique law journals. Click. A small wooden panel slid open, and there it was, the safe. Victoria went pale. "What is that?" she demanded. "Something you missed." My father had shown it to me when I was 16. "In case anything ever happens to me," he'd said, "trust actions, not words." The combination was my birthday. The lock turned. Inside wasn't cash. It wasn't jewelry. It was a thick manila envelope and a small velvet box. Victoria stepped forward. "Harper, don't be dramatic." I pulled out the envelope first. My name was written across it in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a notarized document, an irrevocable trust, dated 6 months ago, transferring full ownership of the mansion and 60% of his company shares to me. There was a clause highlighted in yellow. In the event that my daughter, Harper Williams, is removed or pressured to vacate the primary residence by any party, all remaining marital benefits to my spouse shall be immediately void. Silence filled the room. Victoria's face drained of color. "That's not real," she whispered. "Oh, it's real." And then I opened the velvet box. Inside was my grandmother's ring, the one Victoria had begged my father to sell last year. Under it was a USB drive. My father had been thorough, very thorough. The drive contained recorded conversations, Victoria meeting with a real estate broker months before my father's passing, discussing listing the mansion once paperwork clears. Premeditated, calculated, and legally devastating. "You can't use that." She stepped back. I met her eyes for the first time without grief clouding them. "I don't have to." Because the trust had already triggered the moment she handed me that suitcase. She hadn't just tried to throw me out. She erased her own inheritance. By morning, my father's attorney was in the living room. By noon, Victoria was the one packing. Turns out the mansion was mine, and she had 30 days to vacate. But what she didn't know yet, that was only the beginning. Victoria didn't leave quietly. She threatened lawsuits, she cried to mutual friends, she tried to paint me as the ungrateful stepdaughter who manipulated her grieving father. But evidence doesn't care about emotions. My father's attorney shut down every attempt. The trust was airtight, the recordings were time-stamped, and the clause? Ironclad. The day movers came for her things, I stood in the foyer, the same place she handed me that suitcase. She looked smaller somehow. "You planned this," she accused. "No," I said calmly. "He did. And that's the difference. Revenge wasn't screaming, it wasn't cruelty, it was patience, it was truth. After she left, the mansion felt different again, but not empty. Peaceful. I renovated the study first, kept the safe, added my own documents. I stepped into my role at my father's company, not because I needed to prove anything to Victoria, but because I wanted to honor him. And here's the part people don't expect. I didn't sell the mansion. I turned part of it into a foundation in my mother's name, scholarships for young women studying business and law. If Victoria had succeeded, none of that would exist. She thought she was removing an obstacle. Instead, she activated a legacy. A year later, I heard she moved into a small condo across town. No mansion, no shares, no empire. Just consequences. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about surviving them and thriving anyway. Now, I want to ask you something. If you were in my position, standing in that foyer with a suitcase in your hand on the worst day of your life, would you have walked away quietly or fought for what was rightfully yours? Let me know in the comments, because sometimes the real inheritance isn't money or property. It's knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone rewrite it.